Welcome back. As we've already mentioned, Israel has been accused of humanitarian violations and alleged war crimes. But it's not the first time the country's army has faced such criticism. Under international humanitarian law, warring parties are supposed to distinguish between combatants and civilians. They're supposed to make sure that they only attack legitimate military targets. They should also guarantee that the military advantage of such attacks outweighs the possibility of civilian casualties. Well, in the 2006 war with Lebanon, Israel was accused of violating international law, including intentionally attacking the civilian population and using human shields. No charges were ever brought against the Israeli army, but the latest reports of war crimes come from first-hand accounts by Israel's own fighters. And this has led some to ask if this could be enough evidence to bring about formal charges against Israel for the first time. Well, we're still joined by our guests in Tel Aviv, Major General Yaakov Amidror, in London, Jeremy Corbyn, also in Tel Aviv, Michael Sfard. Mr. Sfard, once again, I want to start with you. We've heard the point being made by Mr. Amidror that the army is investigating. Is an Israeli army investigation sufficient?
Well, unfortunately, and I'm really sorry to say that, but the organization that I work for, Yesh Din, has explored army investigations into allegations of violations of international law and Israeli criminal law. And unfortunately, 90% of the cases, the investigations launched, end up with nothing, with no indictments. The ones that do end up with an indictment, then the penalties are extremely lenient. In the second Intifada, just to give an example, in the second Intifada, more than 4,000 Palestinians have been killed, and only regarding 4 of them, there were indictments filed in the military courts. Only one of those cases, the allegation, the indictment was for manslaughter. So, as you can see, there
probably argued other armies. He's made the point other armies don't even bother to investigate what they do in wartime.
Well, you know, I don't know what other armies do. I know what is good for my country, for my people, and for my army. And I think that in the recent war in Gaza, we passed all red lines. Even if we decide to put away the recent testimonies given by the soldiers, Israel has been activating massive force against the most populated area in the world. Israel has been knowingly, publicly acknowledging that it used a policy of targeting governmental buildings such as the Palestinian parliament, government buildings, the Muslim university. It has used power and force that cannot be described but as disproportional. All these are violations of international law, and Israel must investigate it.
If I could,
because
I'd like
if
to
it
bring
will
in,
not.
Well, let's bring in Mr. Amidror for a response to that. I guess my question, Mr. Amidror, at this point is, if Israel really has nothing to hide, why not allow an independent investigation?
Because, first of all, you see that this Israeli calls himself a patriotic citizen of the State of Israel. So what is a patriotic citizen? And then the question is, whom to bring in? Those people who decide in advance that Israel is a criminal state that should not exist, that should not have the right to fight against the terrorists.
Absolutely nobody in the world who, in your eyes, is capable of being an independent judge or investigator?
Yes, we are doing, as you see from what happened to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, that here in Israel, unlike many other countries, when there is an investigation, a criminal investigation, no one can stop it, no one can stand, no one can hide behind anything. So at the end of the day, I trust the Israeli system. Why? Because I see the results. And the results is that the IDF is more bind to the international than any other military forces fighting today terrorists around the world. The Americans in Iraq or in Afghanistan, the Brits in Afghanistan, NATO in Afghanistan, the Russians. Yes.
The Israeli army is party to the conflict. You're not exactly impartial, are you?
No, what we try is to stop the terrorists attacking us and killing us. Do you think that we should be in the middle of that? No, we are taking side. We are for the State of Israel unlike the other guy from Tel Aviv. We are for the state of Israel, first of all, and we will define and we will find a way how to stop the terrorists, even if that will cost with life of other Palestinians. If Hamas doesn't want the Palestinians will be killed, he should not fight from within populated areas. To fight from within populated areas and then to say don't fight the terrorists in the populated areas, it means not to fight the terrorists.
Right.
There is only one way to fight the terrorists.
If I could move on, if I could emphasize once again, if we could refrain from personal attacks on other guests in this show, I would appreciate that. Jeremy Corbyn, if I could bring you into this discussion, given the statements, the revelations, the confessions, whatever we want to call it at this point that's emerging, does it make an international independent investigation, perhaps even legal action, more likely than ever before?
I think it makes it not only more likely, but an absolute necessity. Israel claims to be a signatory to the relevant international conventions. The laws of war require that civilians are not targeted, that civilians are not unnecessarily killed unless there is a military point behind it, and that fighting is not taken into densely populated areas. Well, Gaza is the most densely populated place in the world. 1,400 civilians died during that conflict. Apparently phosphorus bombs were used. Apparently many civilians were killed with impunity by Israeli soldiers. It's simply not good enough for Israel to say it's going to have its own internal military investigation. It has to be an international investigation. That's the whole point of the report made by Amnesty International and the requests made within it, and the international eminent persons group that have made this call to express their concerns about human rights abuses. What happened in Gaza in January was absolutely terrible. It has to be dealt with internationally. That's what the International Criminal Court exists for. That's what the Geneva Conventions are for.
All right, well, I'm going to have to leave it there because we are running out of time. Let's thank our guests, Major General Yaakov Amidror, former commander of the National Defense College of the Israeli Army, Michael Sfard from Yesh Din, and Jeremy Corbyn, a member of the British Parliament. Thanks so much for joining us here in this episode of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. Feel free to email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. For now, it's goodbye. And before we go, we leave you with some footage from the UK's Guardian. The Guardian's website is publishing 3 films investigating allegations of war crimes in the conflict this week. Take a look at these 3 brothers who say they were used as human shields during Israel's invasion of Gaza.
The youngest of the 3 brothers, Alaa, is just 14.
وقفونا على الحيط نزلوا فينا ضرب شلحونا أواعينا حرقونا وحرقوا الجوالات قدام واحنا بنطلع فيه.
Their mother Nisreen watched her sons being taken away.
أنا شفت الشوفة لقيت بطلت أجمع يعني حسيت إن أولادي راحوا بتطلع في الجندي بقول لي أنت حماس بقول له لا أنا مش حماس إحنا مزارعين وأنت جاي تشطر على مزارعين.
The Israeli army was searching for Palestinian fighters.
بعدين بقوا ياخذونا يعني على الدور كضراع بشري لهم بقوا يخششونا.